How are you doing? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. And what we're going to talk about today is how I win trades when Donald Trump manipulates the market. The goal of this video is to do, let's say, 2 to 3 things. To get you to understand that you're still involved in economic warfare. To get you to understand that that's actually what's going on, right? So I'm trying to persuade you that that's the reality that you're living in. And then the goal now is to try to help you devise a plan as to what you maybe can do about it if you decide that you're going to do something about it. But regardless of whether you do something about it or not, the economic warfare is still going on. And what we're going to talk about today is something that you see in economic warfare is called destabilization, right? So what you look to do is you look to destabilize people's markets, you look to destabilize the economic systems of other people for whatever reason, but that is part of economic warfare. And what we're going to talk about today is how Trump destabilizes a lot of markets. He brings a lot of volatility to markets that can be positive and negative, kind of based on what side of the market that you're on. And then what can you do about that particular situation, right? Now, really quickly, because we're talking about trading, and this primarily is a trading platform, the majority of the videos on this platform, if you haven't really figured it out yet, are going to be based around the markets. They're normally going to include some level of trading. So we're going to use Trump as an example, but I'm really not here to talk about politics and things of that nature because I really don't care. Because I think many people are very uneducated and politically unsophisticated. So therefore, we'll just be talking in circles, right? But because we're primarily talking about trading, we're going to go into the sponsor of the show, which is the highest paid online. We're going to go into a promo for that particular platform, and we're going to get right back to it.
Here is a testimonial for the highest paid part-time job in the world from Katrina Alexander.
So I'm approaching 3 years in this academy. All of my accounts have increased trading, investments, business, and personal accounts. This academy can produce results in all areas of your life when you do the work. Yes, you have to work on your psychology and mindset to get the results.
Okay, and that's the sponsor of the show, and I want to add something to it. So I think I saw a post from Miss Alexander, I want to say a few days ago, in which now she's 4 years into the program. She's been trading for around 4 years, and she's saying now that her account's at around 30% return, right? And so that's greater than what you would get in any bank. That's greater than what you get in any money market fund. That's greater than you would get in the overall stock market. And it's because she applied herself, she continued to learn, and she wasn't looking for a 90-day turnaround, right? And we're going to kind of talk about that. But she's been able to get success by staying diligent, being very focused, not being a slave to the markets, but understanding how to fit that into her life. Now she has a platform and she has a system to be able to generate returns greater than the overall market, right? And understanding the risks that she's taking. So now she can continue to move forward. And so I'm very pleased that she's been able to get that level of success. because that's what this is all about, right? So let's keep getting to the content. So what we're talking about is how I win trades when Donald Trump manipulates the market. Now, Donald Trump makes comments that move the market. He's been doing this for years. It started when he became president the first time. It's now continuing to keep going. And I believe it will continue out into the future if he becomes president. And I think it's very, very likely that he becomes president, right? So I want to give you an example of what I mean by saying Donald Trump makes comments that move the market. And so here's an example of how his comments can move a stock.
Seema Modi's got more on the move, which is historic, biggest in a couple of years here, Seema.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Carl. No matter who wins the election, the semiconductor industry seems to be facing greater pressure following former President Donald Trump's comments on Taiwan. Wall Street is now trying to game out what exactly he could do to Taiwan Semiconductor, which manufactures about 90% of high-end computing and smartphone chips. David Sachs at the Council on Foreign Relations doesn't expect outright restrictions or sanctions. However, he does expect Trump to call out Taiwan's weak currency, which is helping fuel exports, and more investing in U.S. chip factories, plus easing restrictions on permits that have slowed down Taiwan Semiconductor's build out here. TSMC's CEO recently complaining that the company can't find the right talent and therefore chips produced at its Oregon plant are not going to be globally competitive. TSMC actually reports earnings early tomorrow morning. Morgan Stanley says the company's geopolitical risk mitigation strategy will be the top agenda item. That stock down 5%. President Biden reportedly looking at new restrictions on U.S. sales to China, where the semiconductors still make about 30 to 40% of their sales. We spoke to Krishna Maharajan at Diamond Hill, which oversees about $25 billion in assets under management. They tell us that geopolitics are only going to get worse in the next 5 years, and therefore it is a risk that investors will have to assess when looking at the chip stocks across the sector. There are only two names across the sector right now trading higher, Intel and Global Foundries. Both have made huge investments in building chips in the U.S., but as we've been discussing, Carl, still nowhere near what Taiwan Semiconductor produces.
Okay, so that's the video. Now, for people that are not used to, for people that may not be used to talking about the markets, they may not be used to talking about political figures, but kind of from an academic standpoint or from an economic standpoint, I mean. And so they're waiting for the network to play the political game. Well, this person's bad, this person's good, yada, yada, yada. Well, what I want you to understand is what you just saw. So Trump made a comment that he may eventually want Taiwan to pay for their own defense, right? And so the market created anxiety in the market. And so what happened was TSM sold off, and they sold off right before their earnings. And we anticipated their earnings to be really, really good because there's a lot of demand for what they do. So they make the chips that everybody pretty much is going to be using in this AI revolution. So they're very influential. They're very instrumental to what the United States and the plans that they have for the next 20 to 25 years. Also, you want to understand is that the United States and China are involved in economic warfare. Now, many people can't wrap their head around that because China is one of our largest trading partners. We export a large amount of goods. We import a large amount of goods from China into the United States. A lot of major U.S. corporations have relationships in China from the manufacturing standpoint. However, the United States and China are still involved in economic warfare because the United States' goal is to make sure that they are the leading country in the world from a military and also from an economic standpoint. So what they're going to try to do is stagnate China's growth, and they're going to try to destabilize China's economy, right? And so one of the ways you do that is you don't give them access to certain chip making technology. So then China cannot accelerate as fast as the United States because they're going to be moving at a slower rate while the United States accelerates extremely fast. The issue with TSM, which is in Taiwan, I think what Trump is saying is what he does. He just makes kind of a lot of comments. And because the news cycle moves so fast, he doesn't necessarily have to stand behind anything that he says because he can say something today and say something tomorrow, and nobody makes him stand on what he said today. Here's the issue. And people that are kind of savvy know this. There's no way in the world the CIA is going to allow China to take over TSM, right? They won't allow it. So the CIA is playing a different game than a lot of people are playing, right? There's no way in the world that they will allow the Chinese government to take over TSM, right? So because they won't allow it, I think it's very unlikely that the United States will from a military standpoint, divest out of Taiwan because they won't allow it. And the thing about the CIA is they're not going to play the political game that most Americans are used to playing. They're not going to play that. So if you become opposition to what their global plan is, then that's going to be a problem for you and your group, right? But it works good for like the domestic side of the game. It works good for his following to hear this kind of stuff. But there's no way in the world for people that are actually savvy that believe that the CIA is going to allow the Chinese to take control of TSM. They won't allow it, right? And two, if China invades Taiwan, you don't have to worry about a lot of stuff, because if they do it overnight, which most likely to happen because they're on a different time zone than we are, when we wake up the next morning, the market will probably be down 60% because that'll be the beginning of a war, right? So it really doesn't benefit anybody to have that situation take place, right? But again, when you're in this 24-hour, really 12-hour news cycle, a guy like Trump can say stuff. Nobody makes him stand on what he said the day before, but the way the algorithms are kind of, I would say, curated, they take what he says and they trade off of it. And you got to really understand that, right? So, 20, 30 years ago, the president would say something that would have to go through an organization that dealing with the White House. Then it would go out to the press, right? And then from there, we would get the information. Now you got a president that can just go on social media and he can type stuff. So because he can do that, there's algorithms that are conditioned to trade off social media accounts. And then based on what those social media accounts say, then they either buy or sell securities. That's the kind of world we live in, right? So what Donald Trump does by default, whether he's trying to do it intentionally or not, he's destabilizing markets. Now, here's what I want you to understand, because this is the reality that we're currently living in. Swing trading has made me the majority of my trading revenue. I've made the majority of my trading revenue swing trading. And what I mean by swing trading is that I'm normally looking at a movement that's going to take place north of 90 days. When I say north of 90 days, I mean it's going to go out farther than 90 days. Normally, my analysis on a trade is that it's going to be north of a 90-day. I'm rarely looking at a short time frame movement. So since I've been a options trader, the majority of my money I made as an options trader is on what we would call swing trades. Now, my definition of a swing trade is going to be north of 90 days. And one of the reasons why I do that is because there's so much volatility in the short term, and the options contracts are priced based on the volatility of security, also the contract. To me, it's a lot more difficult to be successful within a shorter time frame. So what I learned how to do was to trade on a longer time frame. Okay. Now here's something else. I have the ability to know the direction of a stock, and I've barely been wrong. Okay. It's not just something that I've developed. To me, it's a gift from God, right? When I say God, I mean God of the Bible. Okay. I have an ability to look at a ticker and to understand what direction that ticker is going to go into for an extended period of time. Right. So everything between now and that event, to me, is all noise because I know what direction that is going. Right. I told people this about Peloton. I got videos in my course about Peloton. I got videos in my course about Rite Aid. Right. When I first put the course out, I had the video about Rite Aid in the capstone module. Right. Look at what Rite Aid is trading right now. OK, I told people this about Carvana. Carvana has bounced back. Carvana is going to a zero. OK, it just will. I think Duolingo is going to a zero. Right. I have videos on YouTube about Avis. Right. It just took more time than what I thought. But we saw what happened with Avis when they did the I forgot what you call it. When they did the special dividend, I jumped in here and said, OK, after they do the special dividend, it's going to sell off extremely aggressively. And that's just what it did, because what they did was they cashed out of that stock. Right. So it's not just something I just developed by reading a lot of books and studying. It really is a talent that I have. Right. But it doesn't mean that just because you can't do it, you can't be successful in the market. Because let me give an example. LeBron James don't play nothing like Michael Jordan, but they both got talent from God. They don't play anything alike. Right. So you got to understand that just because somebody has talent in an area and they're being successful in that area, it doesn't mean you got to do the exact same thing that they're doing to be successful. You can bring your talent to the market. Right. But one of my biggest things that makes me successful is I'm very persistent and I'm very focused around what I'm doing. but I know the direction of a stock and I've rarely been wrong, right? Because the difference between me and a lot of people is I've been given the ability to see things exactly as they are and to see a scenario exactly as it is, not what somebody's trying to sell me on, right? So let me give an example. If Trump does what he says he's going to do and Tesla loses the ability to sell EV credits, right? They're a $50 stock, maybe 100 if they're lucky, because they make a lot of money off EV credits that they sell to other corporations. I was talking about this with Dr. Kayla about this carbon credit thing, which to me is really a shell game, where if you can generate them because of your business, you can sell them to somebody else that doesn't generate them and they get the credit for having it, but they're really involved in the same business. So Tesla makes a lot of money by generating carbon credits. If Trump gets rid of that type of industry where you can sell these EV credits to other businesses, Tesla's going to lose a major revenue stream for them. Most car companies trade at maybe 4 times sales, right? Maybe 4 times revenue. That's what they trade at. Tesla's trading way above that. Now, Elon's trying to convince people that they are everything else except a car company, because if you ever snap out of it and realize it's a car company, you're going to ask yourself, why am I paying this much of a multiple on revenue to buy into this particular deal when every other deal is trading at around 4 times sales? See, when you evaluate a company, you evaluate it in comparison to the rest of the companies in this industry. You never evaluate a company independently of the other companies in the industry, because what you'll find yourself doing is overpaying for what that company does. Okay? But what we've done in this world is this, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, because to me, there is no conspiracy. Everything's right in front of your face. Most people can't see what's right in front of them. They just don't have the ability, right? But some people have the ability to cook really good food, right? But they don't have the ability to see what's right in front of their face. Some people have the ability to raise children really well, but they do not have the ability to see what's right in front of their face. They don't. There's just not an ability that they have, right? Michael Jordan had, let's take Vince Carter. Vince Carter had impressive leaping ability, right? But it doesn't mean he had ability in another area. So people got to kind of understand is everybody don't get the same ability. That's why we need groups and we need community, because everybody's not going to bring the same thing to the table. So we need a group of people. Everybody brings something different, and then we can play off of everybody's strengths and we can downplay everybody's weaknesses, right? So Elon Musk was put here to be the face of tech after Steve Jobs passed away. That's his job, right? That's his job, okay? And so once you understand that that was his job, you understand why he's getting so much PR, and he's gotten so much PR, especially post-pandemic. You understand me? Because nobody thought what they thought about him before 2020. That's just the reality, because I was around before 2020. So it's interesting that he's been able to totally reframe who he is in the eye of the media, and it made him very wealthy. But let me explain something to you. These people print money. They can make somebody rich anytime they want to, because they print money. See, so when you understand that you're dealing with people that print money, they can make you wealthy anytime they want to. But you got to understand who it's coming from. But if they want to make you wealthy, so they've made Elon Musk extremely wealthy by making him the face of the EV movement and making him the face of tech, because they needed a new face after Steve Jobs passed away. And they didn't want to make some of the older guys like Larry Ellison and some of those guys a face of tech, because they wanted to be a younger person, even though he's not old, but he's also not young because he's north of 50, right? But he's younger than Larry Ellison. He's way younger than Bill Gates. These guys are in their 70s. If you look at Tesla right now, their institutional ownership is around 43%. If you go look at who actually owns the stock, right, it's not Cathie Woods, it's Vanguard. How come on television they allow Cathie Woods to give price targets on Tesla, and she's not even the majority owner of the stock? Her fund doesn't even own the majority. Vanguard owns the majority of Tesla stock from a fund standpoint. They own more shares than anybody. How come nobody asked Vanguard what's their price target on Tesla? Then it's BlackRock is the second largest owner. How come nobody asked Fink what he thinks about Tesla? They asked Cathie Wood, who owns, based on the fund standpoint, a minority of Tesla shares. Because why? She's part of the game, right? They're running a game. And so when you realize that they're running a game, you don't get caught up in the game that they're running because that's their game. It's not my game, right? And so what they're going to do is you see now that he's going to go with this new administration. He understands that his bread is going to be buttered for SpaceX because those are government contracts. Tesla's a consumer brand, which means what? He always got to find a new customer, right? He wants to do business with the government because now all he got to do is make 3 or 4 people really happy and the billions just keep flowing in. That's the benefit of government contracts. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? So it may sometimes for me, and this is one of the reasons why I'm looking at trading another asset class, is because I have rarely been wrong about the direction of a stock. The limitations of options is that normally you get a 2-year, the longest you can buy out is 2 years, right? And those 2-year contracts, because you're buying so much time on the contract, can be relatively expensive, kind of based on your budget. I'm not trading a $250,000 account. However, if I can figure out how to take those same positions, but not in a particular security that will decay over time based on my expiration date, I think I can improve my chances of being a lot more successful. And I think I can make a lot more money because I have not been wrong about these stocks, right? But I have been given the ability to see the situation for exactly what it is. And 2, I act on what I see. I don't sit on YouTube or live stream to talk about it for 12 hours. There's nothing to talk about, right? If I believe in this situation and I feel like I've done my research and I feel like I have a good understanding of what it is, I'm going to act on it. I'm not going to sit around and talk about it for 12 hours, right? So that's what I want people to understand. So that's why I've been such a good swing trader, is because I have not been wrong about the direction of a stock. I've rarely been wrong. But to me, what I've realized over time is that what is obvious to me, it may not be obvious to somebody else. And it's often because they're caught in the narrative that a lot of these companies are selling them, right? But you always got to ask yourself, we're going to take the Tesla example again. The largest owner of Tesla is Vanguard. How come Vanguard's not giving you a price target? How come USB's giving, how come all these other banks, how come the largest owner of the stock's not giving you a price target? They own the most stock. Wouldn't they have wouldn't their analysis or their prediction have the most validity? Because they're the largest owners. So they actually put their money where their mouth is, right? So you got to realize what's really going on around you. And once you do that, it's going to put you in a position to be a lot more successful. Because to me, I don't have judgment on this situation. It is what it is. It was what it was before I showed up, and it's going to be what it is when I'm gone. Because I know who I'm dealing with, right? And I think there's a lack of education amongst people as to who exactly are you dealing with, right? Just you got to kind of know what's going on around you, because it's a shell game, right? Let's go to it. Intraday trading can be very volatile because of random events. So one of the reasons why I don't come out of the gate and teach people intraday trading, because it can be very volatile because of random events. Therefore, let me give an example. You could have had calls on TSM going into earnings. Everybody knew TSM was going to kill their earnings. Everybody knew it, right? There's so much demand for what they do. There's no reason why they're not going to really do well on earnings. And then what happens is 2 days before earnings, Trump says something about Taiwan having to pay for their own defense, and it tanks. But long-term, TSM is just going to keep going up, because if you look at a TSM chart over the course of this year, it's gone up. It's just kept going up, right? So intraday trading can be very volatile because of random events. So on a shorter time frame, that's where you're going to see a lot of the volatility. And this is where a lot of traders get chopped up. So there's a guy, he's a younger, looks like maybe he's an Arab. I don't know. He could be a Persian. I don't know. And he makes a lot of money in the market, right? Not only trading, but also selling courses. And he teaches people how to trade on very, very short time frames, right? The challenge with that is that it's very, very volatile. It just is. Now, the volatility can make you money if you're on the right side of the trade, but it's very volatile because the smaller time frames is where you have things happen to where this can happen. There can be so if you saw CrowdStrike when it opened up on Friday, it was down almost $40, right? Eventually, CrowdStrike should go back up because they are running a real business there, and there's a lot of demand for what they do, right? But that's the short term. And this is why a lot of people lose in the markets, because the majority of the education in the markets is based on short-term trading, because people feel like the solution to my problem is short-term money, right? So if they get paid every 2 weeks and they feel like that's not enough money, they want money on a shorter time frame than 2 weeks. So they want daily money, which I get, I understand it. But the problem is that they're not getting an understanding of how these things actually work. So I've never been a fan of just teaching somebody a technical pattern and saying, okay, trade off that. I've always been a fan of teaching you how these things work. That's just what I'm very, I don't know how to say it. I'm just very inspired to do that. To me, you can't function properly in these spaces without understanding how the space works. And if you watch my channel for any extended period of time, what I've always tried to hammer home to people is you need to learn how these spaces operate, right? Years ago, I was having problems with a professor at school, and I reached out to my aunt who taught at colleges, right? And she explained to me, once I explained to her what was going on with that professor, she explained to me everything that professor was doing wrong that they should have been doing, because that's pretty much the state law, right? Like, I didn't know that they had to give me a test rubric, but they did. They should have gave me a test rubric before they gave me the test. They didn't, right? And so because she understood how this thing was supposed to work, because she understood it comprehensively, she was able to give me information to where when I went and made a complaint about this particular professor to their boss, I was able to go in with all these things that this professor didn't do right. What that professor thought I was going to do was just go back and forth with them, because they don't believe I have access to resources, to people that can give me the information on how these things are actually supposed to work, right? And so that's something I'm very passionate about, is helping people get an understanding of how the space actually works. I know somebody, and this was Lance taught me this years ago, that a lot of people try to trade Forex, but they don't understand how the economy actually works. And so they struggle because they don't know why the currency is being bought or sold. And they're making themselves believe, well, I'm just going to look at the chart, but they have no idea what's going on around them. And so this is one of the reasons why so many people fail at short-term trading, because they don't understand really what's going on around them. They just think they do. And they're so desperate to get some money in that they just buy into whatever somebody tells them. The largest market in any business, when you're trying to serve people, especially service-based businesses, but also in educational-based businesses, the largest market is people that don't know what they're doing. Once people learn what they're doing, the market becomes smaller and smaller. So the total addressable market in the trading space is what? People that have no idea what they're doing. So it's easy to get them to buy into things, because why? They don't know what they're doing. Once they learn what they're doing, it's harder to get them to buy into narratives, because why? They got experience. They had trials. They've been through things. They made money. They lost money. Now it becomes a little bit more difficult, right? And so that's what I want you to understand. I'm not against intraday trading. In fact, I've had people on my channel that do trade intraday, but that's the most volatile because of random events. And often people, because they don't understand how these things work, it's very hard for them to string together a long track record of success, because what they're doing is they're waking up every day and they're throwing stuff at a wall and they're trying to see what sticks. And to me, you don't trade like that, right? Especially with your own money. But that's what they're doing, because they really don't understand how this thing actually works. Now, there's a trader that told me, right? They learned how to trade on a short time frame because Trump kept moving the market. So this person's in my VIP course. I did an interview with them. And so they went through the program, and we were initially trading, doing a lot of swings, kind of based on market events, because we started trading a lot during the pandemic. Then what they did once Trump got elected is they realized that a lot of my trades was going south, because we talked about before, he would go on Twitter and say something and it would kill their trade. And what they learned how to do as an adjustment was trade on a very, very short time frame. But they taught themselves how to do this as a necessity, because they were tired of their trades getting killed because Trump would say something on Twitter and kill their trade, right? So again, this person already understood how these things worked. They went from being swing to being a short-term, what we call an intraday trader, but they can still trade swing because they taught that they had success in that particular space, right? I didn't have no issue, because a lot of the tickers that I traded on, Trump wasn't going to talk about them tickers anyway, because I don't really trade what everybody else trades in the first place. I always doing my own thing. So I'm not worried about my tickers getting caught up in that scrum of everybody being on the same ticker. I often don't want to be where everybody's at, because one thing I know about it is that when the trade gets real crowded, when everybody tries to leave at the same time, it's going to dump. And when it gets real crowded, you're going to pay a lot more to get into the door. So I don't try to be in really, really crowded trades. Okay. Next thing we're going to talk about. What I want to encourage you to do is trade a time frame that works for you, your psychology, and your budget. Okay. I trade a time frame that works for me. It works in my psychology. It works in my budget. Right. I do look at the market every morning, but I don't necessarily try to find a trade every morning, because what I'm not going to do is force a trade that's not there. I know how to trade. So there is a possible trade for me every day, because I actually know how to trade. So every day I wake up, there's a possible trade. So when the market was selling off really, really hard Thursday, right, I could have traded the retest, but I just didn't. I just sat back and watched it, right? And that could have been a very profitable day on the put side. But I didn't go in that day looking to make that trade. So I didn't trade it. I looked at it, but didn't trade it. And that's something that a lot of people get caught up in, is once they learn how to trade, they think that means takes every trade. Let me ask you a question. Because a person understands real estate, does that mean they should buy every house? They're looking for a deal that works based on their particular portfolio, how they wanted to get it structured, the numbers work, yada, yada, yada. But just because you learn real estate doesn't mean you should try to buy every house, right? But because I can jump into a trade for $100 or maybe $150, a lot of people start to believe that I should try to jump on every trade in front of me, right? Even if you're trading something like an index on the daily, doesn't mean you should trade every day. Aren't you looking for a particular type of setup and you just trade that setup? Many people don't have that kind of discipline. And often when people say that, the question I always ask is, well, how long do I need to watch the market before the setup happens? Like, should I watch it from 9:30 to 4 o'clock every day? Like, how does that work? And you often can't get an answer for that. Now, some people just trade the first session, which ends up like around 11 o'clock, and they're out, whether they take a trade or not. But that's what I want you to understand. I want to always encourage you, especially if you're a beginner and you don't know anything, right? Take a time frame that works for you. And what I mean time frame is, what's the length of time that you're going to be in the trade? What is your psychology? Some people find out taking short-term trades that the anxiety around it, it messes them up. Other people find out I cannot hold a trade overnight. What I mean by that is that they don't like going to sleep with trades in their account. I know a lot of people like that. So they trade short time frame because what they do at the end of the market is they close everything out, win or loss. They don't care, because what they don't want to do is go to sleep thinking about the trades they still got set up. Me, I hold a trade out. I hold a trade out over a year. I don't care. Right? I will enter into a trade, and I got a contract on this company that makes a nicotine drug. That contract don't expire till sometime next year, right? And they got earnings coming up this quarter. If I get the return I want, I exit. If I don't, I still sit in the trade. I don't lose sleep at night worrying about that trade, right? Because my psychology is different. Everybody's different. Then you got to look at your budget. Do you have the budget to hold in trades? And then what you may need to do is sometimes build your account up to get the type of budget to where you can take trades that work for you and your psychology. Because a lot of people will teach you to trade short term because your budget can afford it. But does it work for you and your psychology? Are you going to have so much anxiety trading short term to where you're going to be a mental wreck because you can't really psychologically handle it, even though your budget can handle it? So to me, all three got to line up. So that's all I want to talk about. But I want you to understand that if Trump wins the election, and I think he will, all right, I think he pretty much now is a shoo-in to win, unless something comes out of nowhere. But I think if you're going into a convention in August and you don't even have your candidates yet, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to win an election. That's just my personal opinion, right? You're going into a convention in August, which is still almost 30 days out from when they actually have the convention. And you don't even have your candidates yet if you get rid of the currently people that are in there now. So then in August, you now got to start trying to build up momentum for these candidates. You got to raise money, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I just don't really see it happening for you, right? But that's just my own personal opinion. I really feel like they're setting up for midterms because they want him in there because that's going to make it easier for them to run for midterms. To me, that's their play, right? That's what I see going long term. So they're not tripping on November 2024. They're looking at midterms 2 years out, right? So if he gets into the seat and he continues to do what he does, which is make a lot of bombastic statements that move the market, I want to learn how to operate around that because I'm not going to be able to do anything about it. He's going to get 4 years to do that. So I have to adjust to what we call market conditions. But I've been through this before because I traded before with him in office and I did what I needed to do, right? So that's what I want you to understand. Again, talking about economic warfare, talking about how people come in to destabilize markets, that's what they're going to do. Whether they're doing it intentionally or they're not doing it intentionally, if the impact of what they're doing is destabilizing your market, you got to figure out a way to adjust to it because I can't stop him from doing what he's doing. So now I have to adjust. If you don't understand and learn how to adjust through these situations, you're just going to be negatively impacted. You can go on YouTube and talk about politics all day. It won't change anything, right? So I hope you got some value from it. I'm going to read these comments. We're going to go through the super chats. If anybody want to come in and talk about anything they have a disagreement with, whatever, comments, questions, they can do that. And then we're going to get up on out of here. Okay, so that's pinned. So Corporal Checks TV, appreciate the $1.99 super chat. Leo Johnson, man, appreciate the $1.99 super chat. Ray Gun, man, I appreciate you being a mod. Appreciate you for always coming through the $2 super chat. Mr. John, appreciate the $5 super chat. And Roscoe going to be the sponsor of the show. Have I checked out the DJT stock? Apparently Trump share makes the majority of his wealth. I wonder if he'll pump and dump the stock. So Roscoe, what I would encourage you to do is look at the stock and look at the chart. So I have talked about that stock multiple times on my community wall. And as far as pumping and dumping, I wouldn't be sure. But I have talked about that stock multiple times on my community wall. I've charted it. So I would encourage you to go through that. So I don't know if you're getting a community post, but they've been there. Because I don't know what y'all are seeing on YouTube on your end. I just know what I'm putting up. But I've talked about this multiple times on my community wall. I've charted it out. I've talked about it multiple times. And if he'll pump and dump the stock, so I don't know what's a pump and dump. So what's your definition of a pump and dump? But I appreciate you for being a sponsor of the show. Thank you. AW Beats, man, appreciate the $3 super sticker. Dr. K, appreciate the $2 super sticker. Thank you for being a mod. So appreciate everybody for coming through and being a mod. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your life to be a mod. You don't have to do it, but I appreciate you coming through and helping me out. So let me go through some of these comments. So anybody got anything they want to talk about? This is a perfect opportunity. You don't have to just ask me in the chat. You can pop on and we can have a conversation about it. So Al Tech from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. What's up with it? Miss Phoenix 91 from Toledo, Ohio. So Dr. K says, did y'all see him as a guest on All In with the who's who of the VCs in the tech industry out here in Silicon Valley? I need to check that out. He got a lot of connections to Silicon. We're talking about the same person, which I think is Donald Trump. He got a lot of connections through his VP. Well, let's see how that goes. So Alexander Wilson says, Intel's foundry is used behind TSMs. The only foundry that's in Taiwan's ability is Samsung, but Samsung can't handle the volume that Taiwan can. I feel you. Yeah, Taiwan, TSM is very, very instrumental to the whole thing that they're trying to do. In fact, they even got money from the U.S. government to build. I think they're going to build something inside the United States. So Vicky the Kid You says, you're not wrong. I had to switch to swing trading from day trading. The moves are too big and too quick. Can't sit and wait on levels anymore. I feel you. I mean, everybody got their own way to trade, but Vicky the Kid, the real money in teaching beginner traders is teaching them short-term trading because that's what they want. Most people get paid every 2 weeks. So what they want to do is get paid in a shorter time frame than that. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And again, the beginner market is where the most addressable market is at, right? So there's a lot of money in teaching people or giving people plays that allow them to try to make short-term money, right? I'm not against it because it's just it's what people really want. So I'm not against it. But people just got to figure out what works for them. I won't force a trade. I try not to. In fact, I got something on my wall that says do not take a trade just to be in a trade. And I find out a lot of people do that because they make their mind up that they're going to trade today. And it's like a quarterback that drops back and already knows who he's going to throw to, even if the person is covered. And you see quarterbacks do that, and they just throw a pick because before the ball even got snapped, they don't make their mind up who they're going to throw the ball to, right? And what they need to do is look off that person and go take the ball to somebody else, but they don't want to do that because they're going to throw the ball to that person. And normally when they do that, they throw a pick. So I appreciate the comment. So L. Light says Tesla market cap is way too big versus legacy automakers, in my opinion. Definitely. But I think funds realize the same thing, which is why they're only in that deal at 43%. Right? They don't have a lot of institutional buy-in. Tesla really is it's a retail stock. And Elon understands that most retailers don't know what they're involved in. They're just buying into the story. They don't know how to value a company. They don't want to learn it. They just want to feel like I'm part of this thing and yada, 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 and this, that, and the third. And that's cool. It's an open market for them to do that. Right? But what they trade on their price, their stock price, based on the revenue that they bring in, to me, I don't see the correlation. Right? And I think their growth is gone. Right? Year to year, we know it's gone, but I think it's going to continue to show that it's gone. But let's see how it plays out. He may be able to get a sweetheart deal out of Trump. So let's see how it goes. Ms. Phoenix says facts on Rite Aid currently at 10 cents. Definitely. And then we know that Walgreens Boots Alliance is also having an issue. So those two organizations might be on their way out of here. Rite Aid probably is already on their way out of here. Walgreens Boots Alliance might be next out of here. Right? And it just took time. But I talked about in the video, Walgreens Boots Alliance never showed that they could bring in a CEO that could actually run that company well. So if you looked at their chart, all those years, the stock price kept going down. So they never brought anybody in to turn it around. So it's over for them. And then they're losing footprint. There used to be two in the Atlanta area. I think one is a Walgreens. I don't know what the other one is now. So they're gone. So they're losing footprint. So when you see that happening, they're dropping revenues and they're losing store footprint, it's going to be difficult for them. So Alexander Wilson says, Huang is really the face of tech. I have no idea how he doesn't get the notoriety that Musk does. He don't want it, and he hasn't taken that deal. So Huang has a corporation that they're very essential right now in the marketplace. Like you kind of can't go around them based on where they're positioned. And he wasn't picked to be the face of tech. They picked Musk to be the face of tech. And that's just how it goes. So when they picked Musk to be the face of tech, NVIDIA pretty much was just a gaming company. Now things have changed, but they haven't decided to make this guy the face of tech, but they could. They may do it next year. You never know, right? But they just made Musk the face of tech, and that's how this game works. They pick people to be the face of something, and if you go along with it and it works out, they can make you wealthy, right? So it is what it is. So Ms. Phoenix says revenge trading will kill your brokerage account. Most def. So Roscoe says he'll basically promote the stock and sell the bulk of his shares. The company's overvalued, revenues below 10 million, but the market cap is in the billions. I agree with you. The company really doesn't drive a lot of money. It's really a shell company, right? So they were created to do that merger with what is it? What's the name of the social media platform he has? But I don't see any promotion on his side of the stock at all. Right? I just don't see it because I think he's concerned with running for president. And I think him getting the attempted, quote unquote, attempted assassination of him, it really brought that price up. But Mr. Roscoe, what I would encourage you to do is when I drop something in the community post, I know you got your own life and you got what you got going on. I respect that. But there's a lot of really good information there if you just tap into it. Right? And so that's what I want to really encourage people to do. I've tried to do my best to put all the information out in front of people. They just have to dedicate themselves to taking in the information, because what they won't be able to say when I decided, you know what, I don't want to do this no more, is that the information was never presented to me. So I was in an environment where nobody was presenting this to me, but it may not be for you at that time. And I'm cool with that. It may be for somebody else to present it to you at a different time. And that's how life works. But for the people to where they realize this is the time for me to get access to this information, all the information is being given to you. I'm not hiding anything back, right? But you have to make the decision that I'm at the right time to get access to the information, because I've, over the last 4 years, done everything I can do to present the information to you. and not put a spin on it because that's what I thought about the situation. So I have my own opinion, but I don't promote stocks or promote tickers, or I don't do any of that because it's not about that. It's about people being able to understand this stuff on their own. Do I trade crypto or only the stock market? I don't trade crypto at all. By the Hood could probably hit you up on trading crypto. I don't trade crypto at all. I don't like the exchanges that you got to trade crypto on. I was trying to short Bitcoin a few years ago, and they wouldn't take ACH transfers. They would only take wire transfers. You got a lot of crypto trading platforms where you got to take your dollars and trade it into another crypto. And then from there, then you got to, it's like a lot of moving steps to it because a lot of that stuff is not regulated. Their liquidity pools are very volatile, but their liquidity pools are not very stable. So there's a lot of moving pieces to it. And I just didn't want to go through all that. Right. So I just kept pushing. So that's why I don't trade crypto. Because if you actually kind of understand the fundamentals behind what's going on and you can read a chart, you can pretty much trade anything. The problem is that most people cannot read a chart as good as they think they are, and they don't understand the fundamentals behind what they're trading. They have no idea. Right. They're just waking up in the morning and they're throwing stuff at a wall and they're hoping something sticks. So TSM building in Phoenix. Okay, I felt it was, I knew it was somewhere. So they got US money to do that. So PhD program says, do you take personal observations into account when evaluating a stock, i.e. Dutch Brothers going up in my state or a lot of Walgreens closing? Definitely. But also I understand what's my perspective. So if I talked about Rite Aid closing in Atlanta. Okay, so that's my perspective. My question is how many stores do they have total? Because my perspective may not mean that it's negative across the board for them. So like, what is the proportion? So let me frame it this way. Let's say Rite Aid got 100 stores in the country. Okay, so they lose the 2 stores in Atlanta. Okay, what percentage or what proportion of that is of their total stores, and how much revenue does that represent? Right. So my personal observations a lot of times going to just be limited to my own perspective and what I have access to. It doesn't necessarily mean that I could like macro it out because it's going to be a micro perspective. But at the same time, my micro perspective also can have a macro implication. It kind of depends on the situation. So here's an example. If I see something that I think could be detrimental or positive to a company, so let me give an example. Okay, so this was back during the pandemic, right? And there was this guy who owned this fund, and he said that he had connections in China, and the Chinese people was telling him what was going on in China. And because he was getting that information directly from China, he was able to short the overall market before everybody in the United States started doing it, because in his mind, this is going to come to the United States. So if I have the ability to trend spot on something that I believe has a macro implication, that's different. But I got to ask myself, what is the implication of what I'm seeing? Right? And I got to kind of take that in perspective of what I'm seeing. Does this represent something that could be larger, or is it just maybe on a micro level? Right? And so that's kind of what I got to ask myself. But that's a great question. Yeah, it's True Social. So DJT and True Social is supposed to merge because DJT is really a shell company. It just never happened. This has been going on for like 3-4 years. So let's just see how it goes. But he doesn't really pump DJT. He doesn't really talk about it. He's trying to become president. And then once he becomes president, I don't know if he'll talk about it then, because he's going to have a million other things to talk about. So it's just a shell company that's just sitting there, right? That doesn't really drive a lot of revenue because they don't really have any operations to drive revenue. But again, people wanted to be what they wanted to be. So it is what it is. But I don't think it's a pump and dump because I don't see anybody pumping it, right? I don't know why anybody will buy a company that doesn't drive really any revenue over the course of a year. But, that's just me. Everybody different. So Copeland says, Gina, I don't know how to pronounce that last name, push $60 billion to them chip companies. I feel you. So Alexander Wilson says, you said you work in healthcare. Any thought on these weight loss drugs? Okay, so Alexander Wilson, the same thing. So I've been posting on my community chart for over a year about peptides. So again, I'm asking you an honest question. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Do you see the community post? And I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to do a market sample of you. So N equals 1. Do you see the community post that I post? Because I've been posting about peptides on my community page for over a year, right? Because I learned about peptides from people that play sports, and they hit me to them like 3-4 years ago. So now we're starting to see that going mainstream. So do you see the community posts on the YouTube wall? Are they showing up in your feed at all? Because YouTube may just be shadow banning me on the community side, right? Because I've been talking about weight loss peptides for over a year. So that's a great question. So I'm asking you that. Like I said, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to do a market sample to try to understand, are people seeing my community posts at all? Are they even showing up? Because I got 7,000 subs. How many community posts are showing up? So Erica, what's up to Erica? Samsung bought 1,700 acres of land north of Austin, Texas, and bringing 10,000 Koreans. Samsung's going to be busy the next 5 years. I feel you. Okay, so Austin getting ready to blow up. No problem. But that was a great question. So Terry K. Glamour says, yep, in North Carolina, doing the same thing with Japanese and aviation. Okay. So Alexander Wilson, man, let me know, are you seeing the community posts when they show up? So Nakori says, sometimes. Jay Schoon says, I see them. Drop 16 says, I see the community posts. I look at the community posts. Shows on the feeds based on how often you look at the channel's videos. Yeah, that might have a lot to do with it. That might have a lot to do with it. Because I see all of Erica's posts, but I watch all her videos. I see everyone she posts up. So that might have a lot to do with it. So Julani says, I used to see your posts. I haven't seen anything in months. How often do you watch the videos, though? So Brittany says, I see them, but none about the peptides. They're there. But I post, I sometimes will post on community wall 4 times a day. So maybe I'm over posting. That might be it. I sometimes post 4 times a day. So I might be over posting. So Miss Finney says she sees them. Yeah, so I just think it may be how much you watch the videos. So PhD says, I see community posts. So Alexander says, I don't see any community posts show up on my feed about peptides, but your sexy red posts show up. Yeah, I did the peptide stuff like 6 months, a year ago. But I've been consistently talking about them. Right? Consistently talking about them. In fact, I put up one with Fat Joe dressed up as a peptide, a weight loss peptide for Halloween. So I know that's up there. Because I put it up. Because Fat Joe dressed up as a weight loss peptide for Halloween. Now, I don't celebrate Halloween, but I just put that up there. Right? I put up another one about track athletes taking peptides. And I was telling people that peptides are really the game changer in sports. Right? So they're up. I'm putting them up. So that's what I'm asking. Because 2 people today on this video asked questions about stuff that I've posted on a regular basis on my community wall. Like on a regular basis. You know, because I'm trying to use that to continue to keep engagement because I only do maybe 2 videos a week. So I'm trying to figure out, are the community posts even coming up? So drops is saying for Erica. I see anything Erica posts, I see. But I watch all her videos, though. So I don't know. So AKWB says, I see them days later. I feel you. So Dr. K says, I see the posts regularly. Also have my notifications on for all of your videos. So that might be it. So maybe you people need to hit their notifications up. So Carla Jess says, I rarely see your community page unless I go looking. So do you have how are your notifications set up? Maybe you need to maybe possibly it might be a notification issue. So Dr. K says, Ray Gunn, if you engage with the post, I think it recognize you as a regular as well. Yeah, I think engagement. One thing about social media, it sees engagement. It gives more weight to engagement to anything else, right? And then it also, because of engagement, it boosts that person in the algorithm. So that's why people post a lot of controversial stuff that gets people talking, and they just post and walk away from it, and they don't care what people say in their comments, because what they're showing Google is that people think this is so important, they'll stop what they're doing and talk about it. And then they use that to kind of rank the content. That goes back to like the blogosphere area. So that's something I think maybe people are not doing, is engaging to make sure that they're telling Google that this is important to them, the way they get to see more of it. Facebook works the same way. There's a trick on Facebook. Erica talked about it at her event where it was interesting that Erica knew about this because I thought this was like an insider trick. But we post the content on Facebook. I do it for likes. We try to generate the engagement, which is going to be likes, but also we'll get comments. Then what we do is we copy that same ad. We can take that ad ID, copy it into another ad set, and then repurpose it. And what we've told Facebook is that this piece of content is already, valuable to the audience. And what Facebook could do is that they will put it back in the, the scroll, but they'll charge me less money to publish it. Because Facebook sees your ad as content. And then it's based on what event are you basing it on. So we would start off with a likes campaign. If we could get a lot of likes on that particular ad, we would take that, we would keep all our comments, keep all our likes, and then turn it into another event like maybe either email leads, or sometimes even a sales conversion event. But Facebook would give it to us at a lower rate because we already proved that the content is valid to the audience. So Erica talked about that at her event. I think that's like very powerful, but I think people got to be advertising to kind of understand what she just told her. But like that was a trick we have been doing for years, and that's how we was getting cheaper ads. I don't know if YouTube lets you do that with YouTube video ads, but I know we was doing that with Facebook ads for a very long time, especially in the e-com space. That worked like a charm for years. So Alexander Wilson, I've only been subscribed since the new year. I've talked about it since the new year though, but I don't know. Let's see how it goes. I'm just trying to figure out from the audience, is a community post even showing up? So Carla J says, I see David, Erica weekly, but hardly see the community posts. I feel you. I don't know. It may be a issue with just hitting the notification. So nobody wanted to come through. Appreciate everybody for coming up. If you got any questions, hit me up in the comments. But I want to really encourage you to understand the economic warfare is going on. You can do something about it. You may not do what I ask you to do, but I want to encourage you to do something, because what I always want to encourage you to do is make sure that you and your group have some type of economic strength so y'all can go out here in the world and do what y'all need to do to make sure that you and your group are safe. Hope you got some value from it. David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. I'll talk to you later.